In this lecture, we are going to start with the potential energy of a system of discrete charges. So in this article, we are going to find how much energy is stored in a set of charges which are placed at a particular distance from one another. So first of all, we are going to take an example of a single charge Q1. So let's say this is the charge Q1 and this is any observation point. So potential, just the potential. So we are not talking about potential energy. So just the potential. So potential of this charge Q1 at a particular point, let's say this point, which is at a distance of small r. So that potential is given by 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1, which is the source charge. So over here Q1 is the charge, amount of charge on the source charge. Q1 divided by the distance of the observation point from that source charge. So this is the formula of electric potential of a source charge Q1 at a particular observation point which is at a distance of small r from the source charge. So what is potential? We have already seen that potential is nothing but the amount of work done to bring a unit test charge from infinity to a particular point. So let's say we are bringing a unit test charge from infinity to this point. So what is the total amount of work that needs to be done? That is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 divided by small r. So that is how we define potential. Now, what is the potential energy for a particular system in which we are bringing, let's say instead of a unit test charge, we are bringing Q2 amount of charge from infinity to this same point. So instead of a unit test charge, now we are bringing Q2 amount of charge from infinity to this same observation point. So earlier when we were bringing the unit test charge whose magnitude was equal to 1, we were bringing a unit test charge from infinity to this point. The work was given by this formula. Now instead of unit test charge, we are bringing Q2 amount of charge. So what will be the work done in that case? That will be nothing but equal to the work done to bring a unit test charge into the magnitude of the test charge. So now in this case, second case, the magnitude of the test charge is Q2 instead of 1. Earlier, the magnitude of the test charge was taken as 1. In that case, the work done is given by this formula. And if we have a Q2 amount of test charge whose magnitude is not equal to 1, so in that case, what is the work done? That will be just equal to potential. So this is nothing but the potential of Q1, which is the source charge at a particular observation point. So potential energy of this kind of system in which we bring Q2 amount of charge from infinity to this point. So we are bringing Q2 amount of charge from infinity to this point. So the potential energy, or you can say the work done to assemble Q2 and Q1 charges at a distance of r will be equal to potential, first of all potential of Q1 at this point. So that is nothing but given by this formula into the magnitude of the test charge, and that is Q2. So potential into Q2. So this will give us the potential energy of this particular system in which we have Q1 and Q2 at a distance of small r. So this potential into Q2, that will give us the potential energy of this particular system. So that will be nothing but work done to bring Q2 at a distance of r from Q1 from infinity. So this will give us the work done to bring Q2 from infinity at a distance of r from the charge Q1. So what will be the formula? Exact formula, it will be equal to, potential, which is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 divided by r into Q2. So this is the potential energy of this system in which we have Q1 and Q2 separated by a distance of small r. So the work done or you can say the potential energy which is stored in the system is given by this particular formula. Now we are going to take into account discrete number of charges. Now we are, instead of just two charges, we will have number of charges. So we are going to find out potential energy for that kind of system. So this is the coordinate system that I have drawn, x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. This is the origin of the coordinate system. Now here I have, first of all, I have placed q1 at a distance of r1 from the origin. So if there was no charge earlier on, let's say there was no charge present in this space, and now we have just brought q1 source charge from infinity to this point, whose position vector is r1 vector. So position vector of this source charge is the vector from the origin to this source charge, so that is r1 vector. So we have just brought q1 source charge from infinity to this point, and before bringing q1 charge there was no other charge present, so work done will be just equal to 0 because there was no source charge present earlier. So work done to assemble the first charge q1 at a position vector of r1 vector is equal to 0. Now the work needs to be done when we have to bring another charges and q1 is already present. So when q1 is already present, now we are bringing another charges, then we must need to do work. So now we are going to find out how much amount of work that needs to be done to bring n number of discrete charges close to each other. So let's say now you are bringing q2 charge. So q1 charge was already present, whose position vector is r1 vector. Now you are bringing q2 charge from infinity to this particular point in space. Let's suppose you are bringing q2 at this particular point and its position vector will be equal to r2 vector. So we are assuming the position vector of the second charge is r2 vector. So now what will be the amount of work that has to be done? So this system is similar to this system that we had drawn, that we brought q2 from infinity to this point, and to find out the work done or potential energy which is stored in the system, we must know q1, we must know q2, and we must know the distance between the two charges. And over here we know the position vector of q1 charge, we know the position vector of q2 charge, and we can find the distance between these two charges by triangle law of vector addition. So this vector will be nothing but equal to r2 vector minus r1 vector. So this vector from q1 towards q2 charge, it will be equal to r2 vector minus r1 vector. So what will be the energy stored, or you can say what is the potential energy of this system? So formula will remain the same. The potential energy of two charges which are separated by a distance of a vector of r2 vector minus r1 vector. So this is the separation between these two charges. So what will be the work done? That will be given by same formula. So work done in that case, if we have two charges, or you can say when you are bringing q2 charge close to the q1 charge and you are placing q2 charge at this point. So you are bringing q2 charge from infinity at this point. What will be the work done? So work done to bring the second charge when we already have the first charge. So what will be the work done? It will be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 into q2 divide by small r. Small r was the distance between these two charges, but in this case what we know is, we know the vector which originates from q1 and ends at q2. So we know this vector, and that is r2 vector minus r1 vector. So magnitude of this vector will give us nothing but the distance between these two charges. So now we are going to take the magnitude of this term, that will give us the distance between these two charges. So now we will divide it by magnitude of r2 vector minus r1 vector. So this is the amount of work done in putting the charge q2 at position vector r2 vector where q1 is already present at a position vector of r1 vector. So this is the work done for in this kind of system. Now what if we bring another charge q3? So we bring another charge q3 from infinity and we put it over here at this point, and its position vector, let's say that is r3 vector. So in this kind of system, when you're putting q3, so you have already placed q2 and amount of work done, that the work that you have already done is given by this formula. So this much amount of work you have already done in setting up q2 at a position vector of r2 vector. Now you are setting up q3 charge at a position vector of r3 vector. So what will be the amount of work done in that case? So first of all, you have to take into account that work will be done against q1 charge as well as against the q2 charge when you are placing q3 charge at a position vector of r3 vector. So you will take q1, q3 charges independently as well as the work done in the case of q2 and q3 charges. So you will take q2 and q3 charges independently and q1 and q3 charges independently. So first of all, we are going to see what is the amount of work done when you are bringing q3 charge from infinity to this point against this source charge. So we are bringing q3 charge. Now what will be the work done, or you can say what is the potential energy in the system of q1 and q3 charge? So we already had q1. So in the first example that we did, we already had q1, and on the second side, on the second end, we had q2. But over here, when we are considering q3, we have q1, and now we are on the second end, we have q3. So what will be the work done to put this q3 charge from infinity to this point against this source charge q1? So that work will be equal to W13. So that will be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into, so instead of q2 we will have q3 in this case, because we are considering only q1 and q3 charges for particular moment. So that will be q1 into q3 divided by distance between q1 and q3. So what is the distance between q1 and q3? That will be given by magnitude of this vector from q1 to q3. So we will first of all find the vector from q1 to q3, that will be just equal to r3 vector minus r1 vector. So we will again use the triangle of vector addition. So the vector from q1 to q3, that will be equal to r3 vector minus r1 vector. So this will be equal to r3 vector minus r1 vector, and in the denominator we have the distance between q1 and q3. So that will be given by just the magnitude of the vector that we just found, which is r3 vector minus r1 vector. So this is the work done to bring q3 against q1 charge. Now work will also be done to bring q3 against this q2 charge, which is also present over there. So what will be the work done? It will be given by W23. We have to bring third charge against the second charge. So amount of work done will be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q2 into q3, because we are considering q2 charge is already present. This is the source charge, and we are bringing q3 charge from infinity and placing at this point. So when we are considering these two systems, so instead of q1 and q2, now we will have q2 into q3. So we will have q2 into q3 divided by distance between these two charges, that will be just given by magnitude of the vector r3 vector minus r2 vector. So the distance between these two charges q2 and q3 will be given by the magnitude of this vector, and this vector is nothing but r3 vector minus r2 vector by using the triangle of vector addition. So this will be r3 vector minus r2 vector. So the total work done Now let's say if you just had a single charge Q1 and there were no other charges present, the total work done will be equal to 0, or you can say the potential energy stored in the system will be equal to 0 in that case. Now when you are placing Q2 charge at a position vector of R2 vector, so we saw the amount of work done is given by this formula. So earlier on we already had a single charge and amount of work done to place a single charge is equal to 0. Then when you are bringing Q2 charge near to this Q1 source charge, the amount of work that has to be done will be given by this formula. So the amount of work done in setting up the second charge will be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 into Q2 divided by R2 vector minus R1 vector. So this is the work done when you are placing the second charge. Now when you are placing the third charge, so Q1 is already present, Q2 is already present, then amount of work done in placing third charge will be given by, first of all, it will be equal to the work done to move the charge Q3 against Q1, and then the work done to move this Q3 charge against this Q2 charge. So we already have found the relations for two work dones, so that will be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 into Q3 divided by R3 vector minus R1 vector. So this is the amount of work done to place Q3 against the Q1 charge, and then this last term is the work done to place the Q3 charge against the Q2 source charge. So this is the total amount of work done in the case of 3 charges. So first, there is no work done when we are placing Q1 charge, and then when we are placing Q2 charge, this much amount of work has to be done. When we are placing Q3 charge, there we will have expression of 2 work done. One will be against Q1 charge and another will be against Q2 charge. So similarly, when you are placing the fourth charge, then you have to take into account Q1, Q4, then you will take into account Q2, Q4, and similarly you will take into account Q3 and Q4. So in that case, you will get 3 terms when finding the total work done. So then we will have 3 extra terms over here. So similarly, you can find the work done, or you can say the potential energy stored in the system when we have n number of charges. So for 3 charges, the formula of the work done or the formula of the potential energy stored is given by this expression. So this can be clubbed. So this is the total amount of work done in placing 3 charges. So in all these terms, you can clearly see 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, it is constant. So this is constant, and you can see over here that if I write Q1 as Qi, because you can see that Q1, Q2, the numerator is changing. On the first term, I had Q1, Q2, then I have Q1, Q3, and then I have Q2 into Q3. So the numerator is changing. So I will write the numerator as Qi into Qj, and you can clearly see that nowhere Qi will be equal to Qj. So nowhere in the numerator you will get Q1 into Q1, or you will get Q2 into Q2, or you will get Q3 into Q3. So nowhere in the numerator you will get such terms. So you will always get Q1. If you have Q1, you will never have Q1 on the second term. So you will just have Q1 into Q2, or you will have Q1 into Q3 like in this second term, or you will have Q1 into Q4 when you are talking about the fourth charge. So there will be no term in which you will have Q1 into Q1 or Q2 into Q2 or Q3 into Q3 and so on. So this value of I will never be equal to J. So I will never be equal to J. So divide by, so what we have now, we are writing the general expression. So this is the amount of work done. Now we are just generalizing it. So in the denominator you have r2 vector minus r1 vector in the first case. So you can see over here that when you have q1 into q2, in the denominator you have r2 minus r1, and when you have q1 and 3, then you have r3 and r1. In the last term you have q2 and q3, then you have r3 and r2. So you can see that the charge which is appearing afterwards, so the charge is, let's say in the first term it is q2, so we have to write its position vector first. So we have written r2, then the position vector of q1 is r1, so we have to swap the terms. So in the denominator, if you have qi and qj, so in the denominator you will have rj minus ri. So first of all you will write the position vector of this second charge, and then you will write the position vector of this first charge. So this is a general way to write the expression, but over here this expression, it will just give us a single term, but instead in this last expression, in this last equation, we have three terms. So here also we will write a summation. So here we had three terms. So in order to write the general form of work done, we will write a summation before this term. And as we have said that I will go from, you can see that I will go from 1 to 3. So this factor I, it will go from 1 to 3. And we will have a summation for the second variable, which is j. So we will have two summations. So j will go from 1 to 3. So I will also go from 1 to 3 and j will also go from 1 to 3. So this number, it depends upon how many charges you are having. So in this case, in this system, we have three charges. So I will go from 1 to 3 and j will also go from 1 to 3. So when I is equal to 1, so when I is equal to 1, j can never be equal to 1, as we had said that I is never equal to j. So we will also write over here that I is not equal to j. So at the bottom of the summation, we will also write that I is not equal to j. So when you will open these terms, you will just get this same equation. So when you will open this equation, what you will see that when I is equal to 1, first of all, when I is equal to 1, j will not be equal to 1. It can never be equal to 1 because of this condition. So if I is equal to 1, j can be 2 or 3. So if I is equal to 1, as in the first term, when I is equal to 1, here I was equal to 1. So j can be equal to 2 or 3. So we will get these two terms. And when I is equal to 2, so we have already seen when I is equal to 1, j will be equal to 2 and 3. Now when I is equal to 2, when I is equal to 2, j can be either equal to 1 or it can be equal to 3, but it will never be equal to 2. So when I is equal to 2, j will be, it will take either value equal to 1 or equal to 3. So when I is equal to, it was equal to 1, j was equal to 2 or 3. When I is equal to 2, j will be equal to 1 or 3. And at last, when I is equal to 3, j will take value 1 and 2 because I is never equal to j. So when you will open this summation, you will get q1 and q2 as in this first term, then you will get q1 and q3 as in the second term. So you will get these two terms when you will open the summation, and when you will put I is equal to 2, you will get q2 and q1. So in this first case, you had got q1 and q2, and you will get q1 into q3. So I am just talking about this factor qi into qj. So when you have I is equal to 1, j will be equal to 2 or 3. So in that case you will get q1 and q2, or you will get q1 and q3. And when you will put I is equal to 2, you will get q2 into q1, or you will get q2 into q3. And when you will put I is equal to 3, you will get q3 into q1, then q3 into q2. So these are the terms that we will get. So when you will open this particular summation, you will actually get 6 terms. So here we have Q1, Q2, Q1, Q3, Q2, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q3, Q1, Q3, Q2. So we are getting 6 terms over here. So similarly, when you will open this summation, you will get 6 terms. But in actual what we have is, we have just 3 terms. And when you will see over here, here you have Q1, Q2 and here you have Q2, Q1. And then here we have Q1 into Q3 and here we have Q3 into Q1. And similarly here we have Q2 into Q3 and we have Q3 into Q2. So we have 2 terms. So we have double terms. You can say that, for example, here you have Q1, Q2 and here you are having Q2 into Q1. So we are getting 2 terms, 2 same terms. So here also we get 2 same terms, this term and this term, and we will get 2 same terms. These 2 terms will be obtained in this expression. So instead of getting just 1 term, here you can see that you have Q1 into Q2 but you do not have Q2 into Q1, and here you have Q1 into Q3 but you do not have Q3 into Q1, and here also you have Q2 into Q3 but you do not have Q3 into Q2. So we have to cancel the double terms that are appearing. So therefore we will divide this whole expression. When you will open this whole expression, you will get 6 terms, but in actual what we need is just 3 terms. So we will divide this whole expression by a factor of 2. So when you will open this now, when you will open this, you will get 6 terms, but the double terms, they will get cancelled because of this 2 factor, because this will be equal to this term, this will be equal to this term, and this will be equal to this term. So this double factor, it can be omitted by dividing this whole expression by 2. So this is the final work done. It is the general form of work done in case of bringing the 3 discrete charges, and what will be for the case of n discrete charges. So in that case there will be no difference, but only in this upper limit. So if you have n discrete charges, I will go from 1 to n and j will go from 1 to n, and all other factors, they will remain the same. So that will give us the general form of work done in case of bringing n charges. Now we are going to talk about equipotential surfaces. So equipotential, as the name suggests, that equipotential surface, it is a surface on which the potential is same at every point. So let's say if you have any surface, you are considering any imaginary surface, and potential on all the points, at all the points on this surface is same. So that particular surface will be called as an equipotential surface. That potential is same everywhere on that particular surface. So what are the some properties that we can, some of the properties that we can derive from this definition of equipotential surface? So first of all, if you have an equipotential surface, the work done in moving a test charge, the work done in moving a charge from one point on the surface to another point which is also on that same surface, so the work done to move a charge on an equipotential surface is equal to 0, and that's because the potential difference is equal to 0. As we have said that potential at all points on the surface is same. So what will be the work done in moving one charge? Let's say you are moving Q charge from this point to this point. So that work done, so what is the potential difference? Potential difference is nothing but equal to work done divided by the amount of charge that you are moving. So here we are moving Q amount of charge from this point to this point. So what will be the potential difference between these 2 points? It will be just equal to the amount of work done divided by the amount of charge that we are moving. So In the case of equipotential surface, the potential at this point will be same as the potential at this point. So potential difference will be exactly equal to 0 for the case of equipotential surface. And if potential difference is equal to 0, the work done in moving the charge will also be equal to 0. So this is the first property of equipotential surfaces, that if you are moving a test charge or any charge from one point on the surface to another point on the surface, so work done will be always equal to 0. Now the second property is that the electric field on the equipotential surface is always perpendicular to the surface. So electric field is always perpendicular to the equipotential surface. So that's the next property. Now how this is possible? As we have seen that potential difference VB minus VA, let's say this is A point and this is B point. So potential difference is given by minus negative of integral from A to B electric field E vector dot dl vector. So you are moving a distance of dl. So this dl is very small elementary length. So you are moving a very small distance of dl vector. And electric field in this region, let's say the electric field is given by E vector. So we do not know what is the direction of electric field. So we are going to find out the direction of electric field when you are moving from one point to another. You are moving by a displacement of dl vector from one point to another on the equipotential surface. And what is the electric field? It is E vector. So what will be the potential difference? Potential difference will be given by exactly this formula. So we are well aware of this formula that we did in the starting of this lecture, of this chapter. So the potential difference VB minus VA, obviously it will be equal to 0 because we are talking about equipotential surfaces. So the left hand side will be equal to 0. So therefore the right hand side will also be equal to 0. And if you talk about E vector dot dl vector, now this will be equal to 0 only when the cos of angle between E vector and dl is equal to 90 degree. Now this term will be equal to 0 when E vector is perpendicular to dl. Now it will always lie in the plane of the surface because we are moving from one point to another, and this point also lies on the surface and this point also lies on the same surface. So dl vector will always lie in the plane of the surface which we are talking about. So as we have said that E vector must be perpendicular to dl vector because the potential difference is equal to 0 in the case of equipotential surface. Therefore, for this right hand side to be equal to 0, E vector must be perpendicular to dl vector. So dl vector is in the plane of the surface and E vector must be perpendicular to dl vector, by which we mean that electric field will be perpendicular to the equipotential surface. Because dl vector, it lies in the plane of the equipotential surface, and we have said that E vector must be perpendicular because of this equation. E vector must be perpendicular to dl and dl lies in the plane of the surface. So we can say that E vector will be perpendicular to the surface itself. Now the last property is that the equipotential surfaces, they help us in distinguishing between strong fields and weak fields. So this property is similar to that of electric field lines. For example, if you have a point charge, the electric field lines, they will originate from this positive charge which we have drawn. So they will originate from the positive charge and will move away. So this is how we draw the electric field lines for the case of a point charge. And the density of the electric field lines, so this we had done in the case of the properties of electric field lines, that the density of the electric field lines, it helps us in distinguishing between the weak and the strong electric field. So over here you can see close to the charge the density of the electric field lines. So these black lines which are drawn, so these are the electric field lines. So you can clearly see that the density of the electric field lines, it is more close to the charge as compared to the positions which are away from the charge. So their density of the electric field lines is less. So therefore the concept of equipotential surfaces is also the same as that of electric field lines, as equipotential surfaces, they also help us in distinguishing between strong fields and weak fields. So in this diagram, the red lines which are drawn, these are the electric field lines, and these are the equipotential surfaces which we have drawn. So in this region, the equipotential surfaces, the density of the equipotential surfaces which are drawn, it is more as compared to this region in which the density is less. So in this first region, this will represent strong field, and in the second region it will represent weak field. So equipotential surfaces, they are also drawn in a manner that in the case of strong field, the density of the equipotential surfaces should be more, and in the case of weak fields, the density of the equipotential surfaces should be comparatively less. So in the case of a point charge, what are the equipotential surfaces? So first of all, we have to take into account that equipotential surface is a surface in which the potential is same at every point. So for the case of a point charge, what will be that surface? So that will be nothing but a sphere whose center is this point charge. So for the case of a point charge, the equipotential surface is nothing but a sphere whose center is this charge. So at all the points on that particular sphere which we will draw, so at all those points the potential will be the same. So here I have drawn equipotential surfaces which are drawn by these red circles. So these are not the circles, so you have to imagine it in 3 dimensions. So these are these spheres whose center is this charge. So close to the charge where electric field is more, close to the charge where we have strong field. So in that case, the equipotential surfaces which I have drawn, they have more density, and you can compare it with the surfaces which are drawn away from the charge. So in that case, the density, you can say the distance between two equipotential surfaces is more as compared to the distance between two consecutive equipotential surfaces which are drawn close to the charge. So the density of the equipotential surfaces is drawn according to the strength of the electric field. Close to the charge, the strength of electric field is more. Therefore, the equipotential surfaces, they are drawn close to each other. Whereas, as you move away from the charge, the electric field, it decreases. That is, the field, it becomes weak, due to which now the equipotential surfaces which are drawn away from the charge, they are less dense. So these are the all properties of the equipotential surface.